Death Stranding 2 is a wilder, wider, and more workable game than the original, and for many players, that's going to be an instant invitation to leap in. For others, the opportunity of watching him fly off a ladder like his own SAM missile site or pound into the ground like 400 pounds of rocks and old toothpaste is going to be just as comically enjoyable as well. Death Stranding 2 opens not with a bang, but with the sigh of a man who just wants to be left alone and is absolutely not going to be. Set 11 months after the formation of the United Cities of America, it finds Sam Bridges doing what he does best, avoiding people and then getting sucked into the world's most fragile, high-stakes Amazon internship ever. Now, holed up in peaceful solitude with Lou, Sam's version of retirement's rudely interrupted by Fragile, who's founded a whole new rogue courier group called Drawbridge. She wants Sam to help extend the chiral network because apparently nobody else in this entire weird damned world is capable of hiking over a hill with a 5-pound box filled with some pins and some whitey-tighties. Death Stranding is a mix of a delivery sim and third-person action game with survival elements all wrapped up in an inventory management style bow. It's weird, it's dangerous, and it's definitely different. Here, for example, the terrain fights back. Weather patterns have been cranked up to now apocalyptic roulette levels. Structures degrade over time, and the haunting risk of a decomposing body always triggers an explosion the size of a tactical nuke. And something else hasn't changed, the long, drawn-out, odd cutscenes. Nothing says Kojima like a cutscene that discusses a lot with a character that says very little that might mean absolutely everything. It's a world both familiar and destabilized, not only to the player, but the character. Sadder, lonelier, and somehow even more dangerous, and you're the guy lugging it all along on your back. Now, as Sam, the player gets to see this world through a changed character's eyes, as the game subtly reminds you a bit of the walking contradiction he is. But unlike the original game, not as resistant to helping or connection, but instead someone who wakes up and thinks, damn man, this again? Even as he's slipping on some snazzy astronaut-looking +20 boots of Jog Fast. Despite some of the changes I just discussed, the world isn't completely different. It's just altered a bit, reminding players that apparently speed walking with that package that just has to be delivered the very next business day does equate to some decided improvements. We now have settlements that know about these characters, places of distrust, but they're ones that are ready to take a begrudging handshake if it means protection and pulling into the ever-growing network that it's Sam's job to grow. And those two states of reluctance that are starting to see a little bit of the light are reflected throughout the story. Now, the Western movie aesthetic and tempo here is hard to ignore. The land unable or unwilling to help itself, the stranger comes in who has a secret past and is resistant to helping, but something just doesn't sit right with him, so he goes in anyway. Squinting-eyed, Clint Eastwood-like movies, that's Sam as the same character. Except here, instead of showdowns and whipping out large-caliber smoke wagons to cannon some fucker across a dirty Western street, Sam's skill was running away. Really fast, or running over there, or running over here. And his tools reflect that. They weren't and still aren't always guns. They're tools that help him put the world back together. It brings a delightful thought to your head when you're playing the game. Does all this connection do all these things and assisted manufacturing and bridges and tram lines and farms coming back online just mean that at some point those connections may prove more dangerous than the situation currently? Luckily, the BT and all of that menace helps that thought process. Alone, no one can really live, or at all. Connections and safe travel mean humanity can at least decide for itself if it wants to destroy itself again. Death Stranding's core loop still remains. Take thing, carry thing, deliver thing. As a third-person action game, the expected abilities are here: sprinting, jumping, climbing, and shooting, and working through areas that aren't easy to traverse requires planning, and planning can be taken in a free-form, well, this looks good kind of way, or leaping into your map to set a course and get a readout of the expected risk level of what you just set. Weight, balance, traction, and terrain, and sometimes, in fact, more times than the original, tearing up an enemy base, smashing at its inhabitants like deadly piñatas to grab whatever's inside, can also be the result. Items found can be used to recycle or create or get upgraded equipment, and equipment updates change delivery speed and methods, while Sam's skills, upgrading them via points given to him from successful missions, adjust world traversal and combat ability. As you can see, that loop just goes back on itself consistently. If you played Death Stranding 1, the core series baseline rests on the Cupid mechanism and the chiral network. The Cupid lets them build out infrastructure in new areas once the chiral network bandwidth reaches high enough connection levels, allowing you to connect all these different locations in a region to one another, helping them be safer, exchange information, safely trade, and live with that BT menace. So yes, you're basically running around the game world selling everybody on joining your own AT&T family and friends network to get more speed. For Sam, though, that means building an entire country's worth of terrain stabilizing gear to get to those locations: ladders, climbing anchors, signs, generators, shoes, weapons, exoskeletons, bridges, and eventually zip lines, tram systems, vehicles, and even more ways to travel later on. Deliver something successfully, save a hostage, kill a major BT menace, or explore a region, and you get rewarded by that group with supplies, as well as the game's own version of a mix of Twitter and Facebook. If this all sounds overly detailed, it is, but it's also the magic of it. You're not just navigating the world, you're mastering it piece by piece as you dive down and also master inventory and planning. Packing and stacking your gear is not just busy work, it's survival. Items go in your backpack, on your shoulders, in your hands, and if you're lucky, inside a vehicle or a carrier. Every single gram counts. You'll learn to tie things down, optimize layout, and then watch it all fall apart when you trip and smash into some rocks and watch your shit float down a river. Add in stamina management, where each bracing against the wind eats a little bit at your reserves. You've got a game that asks you to respect the physics of the game world for every step. Learn the benefits of shortcuts and understand that not everything is permanent, even as you work towards making it so. And nothing exemplifies that more than the situation of environmental changes that can have you end up losing your stuff. Rivers swell and drown your carefully placed ladders, taking half your infrastructure. Timefall, which in Death Stranding is a rain that ages your cargo, destroying it unless you keep a careful eye on it, can consistently cause you to be watchful of those items that won't be accepted on delivery. And you haven't lived until you've watched your entire backpack tumble down a cliff because you forgot to crouch before stepping on a loose rock and realizing that your ladder and the rope system are the actual items fading off into the distance. And then the loop starts again. Like some billy goat deity that never learned the word quit, you have to just mutter to yourself as Sam and say, well, someone needs to do this and I got to go find it. And then you're back off to exploration again. In Death Stranding, exploration is also pretty intricate, but also a bit comical. Your scanner lets you identify paths and dangers, gear left by others, and even detects terrain instability. The game's strand mechanic connects you to the ghost state of other players, like a Forza Drivatar in an otherworldly apocalyptic setting. So their footprints, gears, and choices become part of your world sometimes. A slowly populating ghost town filled with useful junk and weirdly placed infrastructure, with thumbs up on what looks like an old defunct ladder that you can't understand why somebody put it in the middle of nowhere. But it's not always useless. Maybe another player warns you of a bandit camp up ahead or a BT hiding spot. It's time to either stealth, fight your way through, or figure out a way to go back and come back later. Thankfully, combat, while still secondary to traversal, has been expanded in variety hugely, amount and equipment. You'll find more chances to get into dust-ups, as well as usefulness in the items that you have or that you get. Guns and types that existed before have had improvements, as well as new classes, which means expect some new and expect some old. You have bolo guns, tasers, rubber bullets, blood-based grenades, holographic decoys, and launchers, and all are in your main toolkit. Many designed to neutralize threats because if you do end up causing human corpses, again, that can cause a void out, which is an event that makes nukes look like sparklers. Even without the various weapons, Sam can still throw a punch from friggin' Nebraska and has a couple other up-close attacks that can knock an enemy senseless. That is, if you don't get shivved in the back by one of the new electric pikes or shot from an enemy. Using cover, grenades, understanding that BTs don't give a crap about a rubber bullet, but don't like getting hammered with other kinds of rounds, feeds right back into the whole inventory thing again, and the planning there. Human enemies are pretty good, mostly protecting themselves while also trying to get a shot at you, throwing flares up in some places to call in reinforcements, and offering a suitable challenge when it comes to AI when needed. Now, if things get too pressing, you can still stealth away into the night as long as you don't have your pack giraffe-necked on your back. Because it's already not easy hiding, but 300 pounds of emergency toilet paper and lost wedding rings up a cliffside in the rainstorm is going to be easily noticeable if it's stacked like a goddamn telephone pole on your back. Nighttime and daytime also offer different experiences when it comes to battle and stealth. Darkness creeps in, enemies grow a bit more wary, but also can't notice you from as far away. Add in a smoke bomb and a bit of nighttime, and you can return later when you're better suited for whatever enemies you found. However, you also have to keep track of that, as bases do become stronger if left alone and in territory. Now, that push and pull of everything, weight and movement, stealth and combat, delivery time, and discovery opportunity are not only more fleshed out in Death Stranding 2, but improved in pretty much almost every way. That's the gameplay loop, though, and somehow it remains pretty hypnotic, especially because you get into it much faster. We'll talk about that in a second as well. Now, despite being a sprawling game in both sheer size, it's also the systems. It's just the fact that the game's lattice-like style of upgrades, opportunities, and systems are sharper and more detailed and more impactful than you would expect. For instance, let's just talk about vehicles for a second. Sure, hot-footing it around can be a blast, and it makes grabbing items easier, but it's also slower and, of course, more dangerous. Death Stranding 2 has multiple vehicle types, each bringing their own changes to how you can explore. For example, the tri-wheeled bike maneuvers fast. It's light, but it gets stuck on absolutely everything. It's like its tires are made of glue. Other cargo vehicles offer trade-offs for durability and weight capacity, but they turn like drunk hippos, and I swear to God, they burn batteries faster than an old Game Gear. And there's a balance to be found between autonomy and resource dependence and battery management, and it becomes a mini game in and of itself. Overuse a boost or get stuck in sludge, and you'll find yourself watching the warning lights going off. And yes, that is true. When a vehicle that's running on batteries goes low on battery, it turns a bunch of lights even brighter. Whatever. Luckily, you can not only build your own vehicles, but you can steal enemies from them, though those vehicles can't be moved in the same way or take advantage of the building and upgrading that your own can. Luckily, Death Stranding 2 doesn't simulate flipping vehicles or breaking axles, but you can absolutely get wedged on a rock, burn a battery, reversing it, and wish you'd just walked because you packed the back with 1,000 pounds of cat food and men's slippers that some random base needs, and now it's stuck in the middle of nowhere, and you have to figure out what you're going to do. Eventually, as you expand your network and your options, you are going to get access to other means of travel, like zip lines and a tram system that you can upgrade and get working and expand that piece by piece, as well as other means of travel later on. Those open new options for traversal, letting you speed across the land, but without the resource gathering you would get on foot, though you can still eject from lines to explore on foot if you want to collect lost packages, find materials, or deal with some BT you've seen. Collectively, Death Stranding definitely has the skeleton and a great deal of the meat of the original game, but it does build on it. That third-person action-adventure climbing inventory platform game, it's all here. It's just been improved, and blessedly, it opens up a lot quicker when you start the game. And speaking of quickly, let's talk about how quickly this delivers the frames to your eyeballs, and let's talk about graphics and performance. First, when it comes to just the look. If there's any one thing about Kojima and his never skip on it mentality, it's visuals. Death Stranding 2 opens with a view so pristine, it makes me wonder if the PS5 is emotionally ready to render that goddamn thing. The vistas in this game are staggering. They're sprawled out in these layered cliffs and hazy distant peaks. From the very first step into it, rain-slick landscapes, the world terrain being rendered with some damn near photorealistic detail. Grandeur of grit and sand and earth changing over time from wet and slick to dry during rains to ghostly red shimmers of BT-infested fogs as you try to sneak by some ethereal creature who, by the way, their effective killing mode for you is trying to take you to the deep end of a swimming pool and drown you in it, but here that pool is filled with tar, which I think negates the shallow end being more dangerous anyway. Death Stranding 2 continues to show just what the Decima engine can do, the same one used in the Horizon games, and you see some similarities there. So if you like those games, volcanoes and robot giraffes, you'll feel right at home, tumbling down a ridge with 60 pounds of scrap strapped to your back because you thought you could LeBron it over a ladder rung like a basketball hoop rim and miss it by just 2 championship rings worth of distance. But don't worry, unlike LeBron, you won't continue to fail state for another 5 years because even if you die, you come back. It's one of Sam's gifts. Now, like the original game's excellent motion capture work of the actors, we see it absolutely elevated here. Sam's weathered face and detailed gear consistently give a piecemeal look to everything. Him showing up to a mini cutscene looking like someone who stole Space Marine's armor that was 4 times the size of him, or that terrible CGI when Mark Ruffalo's small-ass head Beetlejuiced out of the armor in Iron Man is hilarious. But it's the texture work that nails it. Sam looks beat up. The burns of bad experiences are there. The dirt and grime from trips not washed off show up no matter what you're doing. The other characters, like Fragile, has a soft ethereal look to them, almost feminine, ghostly in a way, while others you meet range from crazy-ass hermits to stop-motion living dolls, chattering away during combat, offering you advice. There's one thing I can say, each one is incredibly detailed. The interplay of wet surfaces, reflective materials, and grime coalescing to form a tactile sense of presence is rarely achieved in games like this, and they've done a great job. Even the smallest objects, the delicate flutter of BB's cradle or the creak of mechanical joints on Bridges' gear, are all really meticulously animated. A little less so when he moves around the game world. There are definitely noticeable times where you're looking at him going like, Sam, dude, seriously, just turn around. Now, performance-wise, the game offers two modes on the PlayStation 5, which was the platform I played on. It's got a quality at 30 FPS and a performance at 60 and above. You'll see some resolution drop and some occasional pop in during the particularly heavy asset areas, including grass, which, let's be honest, most of the time in this game world, grass was patchy to begin with. There's some heavy enemy fights with huge numbers of explosions where sometimes you'll see the FPS going up and down, or you can feel it a little bit. But the open vista, deserted locations just really keep everything from being derailed too much. The bottom line is Death Stranding 2 looks incredible, and inside and outside it reflects the game world, even if at times it's a bit jarring. But what it sacrifices in some of that flair, it more than makes up for in the world presentation and a reason for it being there. There's an energy to the desolation, a kind of vivid silence that can actually be almost felt and heard. It's not just the environment. You're wrestling with it, you're reshaping it, and on occasion, falling flat on your face in front of it, and then standing up thinking, God damn, I hope no one was around to see that. As a whole, Death Stranding 2 is a larger, better-looking, more developed game than the original, which was already incredible looking in all those departments. Next up, let's talk about voice.
Something's still bugging me.
What?
All this talk about extending the network into Mexico. Isn't the UCA basically expanding their territory? Taking control? Claiming it for their own?
Sam, it's not like that. They're not trying to take over the world. They just want to link up new areas with the chiral network. Like the internet before the Death Stranding.
Norman Reedus, man, I've been a fan forever. He returns as Sam, and once again, he plays it like a human friggin' brick wall. He's weathered, he's more expressive here a little bit with occasional more grunts to the other actors. Overall, his performance remains understated. It's effective, though. He's the guy who shows up late at a party, doesn't say much, and ends up fixing the plumbing before leaving. He grumbles, he nods, he sometimes whispers to himself or someone else like a man talking to a memory he's not ready to let go of. But in its minimalistic state, honestly, I find it pretty fitting. What makes his performance work isn't the quality of the dialogue, it's the weight of silences. Sam doesn't have to explain himself. He doesn't even want to, and people don't expect it a lot of times. Hell, sometimes he doesn't even say yes or no. Many times he doesn't answer a question posed to him at all. There were a Telltale game, instead of saying, Sam will remember this during a decision point, it'd just be a colored bar that shows up with ellipses. It gives him that quiet authority like a weary dad who's just seen too much and wants to fix some shit and then put his feet up. But the second he hits a zipline, though, he's a whooping redneck who just discovered nitrous oxide. The dichotomy is so strong at times, it feels very intentional, and it works. He's a stoic loner on foot, full-blown yeehaw cowboy in the air, and I love that. Little moments of celebration he has. They're not only animated well, but they're voiced incredibly well. As for the other characters, hey, they're pretty good, vacillating between solid and creepy and what the hell's going on, and then back to, oh, okay, I think I get it, all in the same discussion. Even minor characters bring a sense of gravitas or a distinct personality, whether that ends up working out or not. Overall, I like the voices of most of the main cast. Sound. Damn, the sound is good. Death Stranding 2 continues that legacy of the first game, which had excellent sound. It turns the atmosphere up to its own character here. Environmental effects are incredible. Rain pelts the ground, winds cut across the rocks above you, and the sound of your boots squelching in soaked dirt made me hope there was a button to check for blisters. This is a game where listening matters because often what you hear is more important than what you can see, or at least more readily available. And the sound design gets especially tense when BTs show up. The moment your sensor starts clicking and spinning like it's trying to dial into another dimension, everything fades, music thins out, ambient noise shrinks, and your heartbeat rises in the mix, and you can hear Sam breathing, short, clipped, panicked breaths. This is until you have to hold your breath so that the BT can't find you, and you can hear him starting to reflex when his oxygen gets low. The sounds of combat work pretty well. Explosions, gun sounds, many of them not typically high-end caliber weapons, so you might need to become accustomed to what those type of guns or hits or sound effects are going to be. But overall, I enjoyed it. But it's how the game works with the music and the sound that is so excellent. For instance, the game adores its large commercial tracks, or maybe not large when it comes to artists, but at least commercial when it comes to something you can expect and look up. And it means that the soundtrack has a resonance to it that's far and beyond what you may see in other games, where maybe they just have one traditional commercial style track with vocals in it as an entry or a movement point between level to level, or an adjustment of some huge story part that needs an appointed reminder to the gamer that that particular moment is special. Here, it may be a mission, then another, a new region unlocked, a new character met. But the use of such heavy track list, especially with vocals, works tremendously well to feel different. You can also get an upgrade to add songs to your own music player that Sam has with him, which allows for you to listen to any of these songs at any time. And the same goes for the smaller arrangements as well, little bits like the menu music and the inventory screens that reminded me of Mass Effect, or when traveling through the landscape and something unique shows up. It's almost music-free when exploring, with just the smallest musical hints rising up at times, in combination to moments where the noise swells before, say, a storm, or a quiet that slips in during a BT encounter. The game's changing the soundscape is on point, and more importantly, it lets a sound cue and a lyrical cue both be used at different times for important things without feeling too lean or leaning too heavily on either one. I think it is great sound work across the board. Before we get to fun factor, I want to talk about just some occasional experiences in this game. First, there's something truly unique about the moment you realize that, yes, you've carried 700 pounds of somebody else's gear across a wind-shredded valley, so you can raise your hand in victory that you made it to a safe zone, that moment of happiness. Then you're told you need to do it again in the opposite direction, but this time uphill. You look back the way you came and you realize, God damn, man, it's only like 600 yards away. About 10 hours in, I realized that everybody in the game is like your lazy friend who only texts you when he needs help moving a dresser. On a later occasion, I had to gather a number of lost items in an enemy base that they had collected and then, like collectors do, neglected and not used. I guess they hoped someday it'd be worth something. So I snuck in, hit an enemy with a bolo, and he fell over a fence, just as another enemy was jetpacking to my right to get a shot on me. Boloed enemy, flattened jetpacking enemy, and I continued on. Once I gathered the items, I came back to the truck, but I didn't have room, so I grabbed a gravity platform that you can use to carry extra stuff and loaded that up. And I got attacked. I strapped that thing to my waist as quick as I could, and I sprinted for cover, only to realize the gravity cart was overburdened. The cable snapped, sent me careening into a wall, which broke another item I had needed for a quest. That's Death Stranding 2 in a nutshell. Greatest triumphs, most humiliating failures, often back to back. However, I did win that quest overall. I gathered my loot, stuffed it in the now overweighted hauler, and waddled back to base, looking like a sentient Christmas tree made entirely of surplus items and regret. I decided to go down and sleep and rest up, and I caught a look at myself in the mirror. I looked like I lost a fight with a haunted ink printer. So I grabbed some drinks, I took a shower, I read a book, then I spent 10 minutes talking to a sentient doll before sleeping, while that doll stared at me all night from his perch aimed at my bed. It's absurd. It's weirdly joyous, it's melancholy, and thankfully, Death Stranding 2 is just much more quickly identified as that. It lets you get into it so much more quickly than the original game, and I adore it for that. I had a great number of experiences that were not only easy to jump into, but a flexible system when it came to the combat, the stealth, or just running around. A lot of great stuff there. But it's not all perfect, and that's where we're going to come to fun factor. Now, first, luckily, as I said, Death Stranding 1, it got made fun of. For people who played it, or at least were interested in it, Death Stranding 2 is a title that I gotta say is more quickly accessed without losing the sense of success and satisfaction, which is a massive boon to a series where the first game actually became its own meme generator about it gets good after the first 10 hours. Listen, no. If something takes 10 hours to get good, it's got 10 bad hours at the starting. And luckily, the developers believe that. Changing up combat to be more accessible and a more instantly starting story and identifiable core elements of the game absolutely helps without losing really any identity. It offers stealth and speed and shooting right away, or at least close enough that it feels like it's a bit more tangible in whatever amounts the player wants to engage with as well. Guns feel better, and enemy AI is smart enough to pose a threat. It isn't Metal Gear, though, and it's not trying to be. Sam is not a soldier, he's a survivor, which is why some moments of combat can still feel very sluggish or awkward. The bolo gun's satisfying, for example, when it works, but the aiming can feel like trying to throw a net while on roller skates at an enemy who is also using a jetpack and somehow has roller skates too. The vehicles also add real options to the gameplay as they did originally, but there's more options here. Whether it's the zippy tri-wheeled carriers or the clunky four-wheeled monstrosities that handle like damned angry Roombas, they give you more control over your entire journey, and the changes that you make feed directly back into the other systems in the game. It's something that we've seen other games not handle, where you can feel or see a gameplay loop spooling off to your right, and it never really feeds back into the game in any way. It feels disconnected. The integration of solar recharging stations, route planning, and player-made roads ensures that pretty much even traversal by vehicle retains a satisfactory feeling of logistics. The game's loop, plan, pack, walk, panic, deliver still rules the design, but this time it's faster and it feels almost harder to get out of or stop. There's just one more delivery kind of feel to it. However, there are improvements I'd like to see made. There are still moments where it feels like Death Stranding 2 is quietly rebelling against you. For example, clunky as hell menus, systems layered within systems, and while they have a glossary, it still can at times appear a bit vague in how multiple systems interlay with one another. The menus are a drop-down that feels like Excel. There's a list of weights and sizes and locations that will take a while to get accustomed to. Add a floating platform or your own personal storage in a nearby vehicle to that choice list, and it can feel almost hostile. And sometimes, again, Sam just doesn't do what you think you told him to do. So as you guys know, I rate games on a buy, wait for a sale, never touch kind of rating system. And I'm very happy to say this one is a buy. I can say that Death Stranding 2's improvements made it worthwhile, and I see nothing here that will alienate prior fans either. The gameplay choices are still simply augmented, improved, and adjusted, but all here. Sam isn't a gunslinger. He's a character who has guns and has to occasionally sling them. But there's a huge difference between the two, even if combat happens more often in this one. But while it may work for other people, the fun here doesn't come to me in neon lights and bombastic cutscenes that don't make a lot of sense sometimes narratively or seem more vague than they need to be. It comes in a strange satisfaction of a well-balanced backpack or a dopamine jolt when you improved a ladder bridge and it works just like you planned instead of absolutely killing you. For someone who bounced off the original, this sequel found a way to draw me back in. It eases you in faster, gives you more tools up front, and lets you stretch your legs without waiting a lot of time to really get to the fun. But at the same time, for anybody else, it still has all of the other cornerstones you would expect. It does expect you to spend a lot of time walking through rain while carrying somebody else's problems strapped to your spine because they were too lazy to walk their 10,000 steps that day. If that bothers you, this isn't the game for you. But for a lot of people, I think it will be. And I see a good deal of fixes here. So anyway, that's it for me. I hope you guys liked the review. If you did, give it a thumbs up. If you didn't, give it a thumbs up. Check out the Patreon. Check out the podcast every single Friday. Check out these videos that are popping up. We've got new reviews coming your way. Peace out. Enjoy the rest of your week.